everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar on building a culture of continuous learning in the workplace. Having said that, let me start with a quote. If you don't know the thing, it's not to be get scared, but it's to learn. Learning never exhausts mind. This is the quote from one of the famous authors and my favorite content author by name Ayn Rand. In today's rapidly evolving business landscape, fostering a culture of continuous learning is essential for organizations to stay competitive and innovative. Let's explore the concept of continuous learning at the workplace and try to discover the strategies for workplace individuals, learning enthusiasts, HR, and business individuals to create an environment of learning and try to seamlessly integrate in the daily work-life balance. By empowering employees, we try to constantly engage them to enhance their skills and knowledge. This gives organizations to build a dynamic workforce that is highly adaptable, reliable, engaging, and ready to face the challenges of tomorrow. Having said that, let me take this opportunity to introduce our distinguished guest and speaker, Smita Rajeev Abraham. Kindly allow me to kindly go through her profile. Smita Rajeev Abraham is a dynamic HR professional. Currently, she is positioned in a strategic position as the group Dubai Holding Group's HR and Admin Director. Her salience carries across in driving the leadership, talent growth, and cultural transformation in the region for the Dubai Holding Group and Al Shamsi's Holding, which is into one of the retail, lifestyle, and the operations are across the GCC and MENA region. She partners across various C-level executives. HR initiatives are driven strategically with her team, and having a strong track record of organizational change, she prioritizes much more on the leadership, talent growth across the retail industry currently she's positioned in. She has held various leadership positions across the retail and the industry space in the UAE and across the MENA region. Smita holds the engineering degree from the industrial engineering in Bangalore Institute of Technology. She currently has the postgraduate from Xavier's Institute of Management and Entrepreneurship. She has completed her CIPD certification, and apart from that, she is a certified LinkedIn recruiter. She also has certifications with British psychology in level A and level 2 courses. So this is just about Smita. Welcome, Smita. Thank you for being on the call and accepting this webinar.
Thank you so much, Harish. That was a long intro. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Coming to the importance of continuous learning. So learning initiates the creativity and it creates the thought process for employees to think out of the box strategies. So the importance of continuous learning at the workplace predominantly has its component in the innovation scope. Competitive edge. When employees do upskill and get reskilled through the continuous learning process, it also simulates a simultaneous synergy within the organizations to gain and track the retail talent across the industrial space. Adaptability. With continuous learnings, organizations can easily adapt to the industry trends, new technologies, and simultaneously drive the innovations across the organization scope. With employee engagement, peer-to-peer learning is a definite learning initiative that creates on-the-job satisfaction, not only for employees, but also for organizations to see a synergy that they are actually investing in their talent pool. Having said that, key components of learning culture, every leader tries to create a champion. So that's how different leaders across the verticals in organization can engage in creating the continuous learning culture across the organizations, having the resources, tools, not only with the standard training formats, the digital side of the learning creates it much more to be a seamless engagement. Dedicated learning hours and learning initiatives have to be driven across the organization so that it is easily incorporated in the daily work life practices of employees, creating a culture of curiosity and to make sure that right questions are being asked to peer-to-peer based discussions and exchanging the ideas will reinforce the learning culture across the organization. So, having said that, Smita, I do have a quick query. I would like to know your inputs with the rapid changes that have been happening across the industries and with the industry expansion. Could you please share your thoughts in letting us know how to nurture the talent pool and cultivate them to meet the evolving business trends? Could you please share your inputs on this?
Thank you, Harish. And hello, good afternoon, good morning to the rest of the world. I don't know which part of the time zone you are, but thank you for being here with us today. Just to answer Harish's question, today we operate successfully in a very fast-moving environment. So everything around us is very fast in terms of technology. It's complex. The climate around us is very complex. And leaders must often need to constantly be at par or need to keep them upskilled just to keep things going or keep things moving. Technology comes in and disrupts markets almost overnight. So, I mean, this is something that we've seen over the last few years. Competitors are around the corner. You don't know when there's a competitor, and it's so unexpected. So, and also with political and economic disruptions, there's a lot of things that are constantly changing. So we can definitely say we are in a VUCA world where when you say VUCA, meaning volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And very clearly, the way we work, as in our classic model of leadership, may not work in this kind of constant change in climate, as in constant change in environment. So typically, all employees who are coming within the organization, be it leaders, be it middle line leaders, need to ensure they are upskilled to a large extent. So they need to be they need to be really, in terms of context, complexity, and connectivity, they need to be fully equipped. So how do we do that? Like, it's not just for the leaders, but it is for people who we bring on board into the system. So going back to Harish's question, the only way that you can do that is at the time of recruiting specifically, you kind of look for people who have the ability to learn, as in their learning agility is high. They're willing to stretch themselves and open-minded to rapidly changing environments. As a company, we need to share the purpose of why we exist and what is this employee's contribution to the larger scheme of the organization. Another very important factor that as an organization and as HR folks that we need to do is making an employee self-aware of his or her working styles, the strengths, the areas that we need to be working on. This will help us collaborate in better ways. So if you have an employee with a growth mindset who has the ability to, who's agile to learn, is definitely willing to work towards to changes. So what happens is that with all of this, there is if trained well, they would have the confidence to lead even in uncertain times. So definitely, this is an important factor. I mean, to ensure and nurture a talent pool that meets the ever-changing demands is important. These are the key elements that needs to be definitely looked at, and especially resilience. Resilience in today's time is very key.
Yep. Thank you, Smita. Thank you for your brief input. And having said that, Smita, I have a small query regarding the same thing as I have briefed on. So I wanted to understand your synergy about how L&D team aligns to the individuals or the workplace employees' goals with the overall objectives and the strategies for an organization.
Typically, like all organizations, L&D is not something that should be working on its own. So L&D team needs to know, as part of the entire organization, needs to know what's going on in the business.
Yep.
What is the strategic alignment of the business? Where are they heading? So typically, us as an organization, what we try and do is we try and ensure that the organization strategic direction is something that we keep in mind when talking about the L&D structure itself, or the long-term plan or long-term strategy from an L&D perspective. How do we go about doing that? By understanding where we are at. So for example, we are building something called as, typically you have it as a competency skills matrix, but we would like to call it a skills matrix, where we are building something where we are looking at what is the gap between the current versus what we want. So what are the levels at which we want an employee to be at? So it could be maybe somebody who is at a beginner level, who is at a senior level, who's at a competent level, or is it strategic level. So we basically classify where this employee or this position needs to be at. What is the competency in the framework? Where will this person stand? So gap analysis is very important. Understanding the gap that you would have from this framework versus what you want to get at is important. And these models are important to build in an organization, because constantly we are changing. And in order for an employee to perform better, and in order for the L&D team to perform better, it is very important to understand what are these gaps that we want to close. And you can definitely define the type of skill set that they need. Like I mentioned, is it the basic skill set? Is it a competent, being a competent person or an expert at that? So these are aspects that we need to definitely look at. The other aspect for sure is when we're talking about a L&D team, it's very important to look at multiple things. One would be the resource that they have. So for example, if it's a 2-member team versus a 5-member team, the kind of work that they can do is different. So resource, time, and budget is key. So these are three aspects that need to be taken into consideration when actually defining a learning pathway. And learning and development team is not only responsible for the learning journeys. It is every employee must be encouraged to take ownership of their learning journey, because the minute you create this thirst for knowledge and you ensure that there is development and there is a career path, people tend to want to grow. So that's the idea. That should be how we kind of encourage the organization. Having the mindset of innovating, kind of looking at things differently, taking ownership of their own training, learning journeys. And coaching and mentoring is definitely one of those tools that would enable to kind of close these skills gap. And there are many more. I mean, we can go on talking about it, but definitely these are the main areas that I would specifically emphasize on.
Thank you, Smita, for answering the query. Probably the points which you have covered will be dealt in the continuous learning part that we would be taking it through. Having said that, integrating learning into the daily work-life culture. So there are certain synergies that have been identified over the processes. So micro learning is one such scenario wherein which there can be a high engaging learning activity across the workplace employees. So it actually blends with the my bit-sized learning modules with high learning engagement and interactivity. So this can be blended with the gamification. So it actually makes it much more on a high learning engaging scenario. On the job learning paths are definitely the real time experiences wherein which employees can be assigned the task to stretch on projects. They can be asked to perform on cross functional teams, and it can be also a scenario with the on the job rotation process wherein which the employees have the learning engagement to adapt to the new skills and know what other functionalities have been across the organization. Career growth is definitely a much more advantageous if it comes from the organization's perspective, wherein which employees are given the stipulated leave, sabbatical leave, for them to enhance their career, and it can work as a returnship program for the employees, so that there happens a high engagement with the talent pool across the organization. Knowledge sharing platforms can be the internal platforms where employees can share and transfer the ideas, collaborate on the problem solving, and also they leverage on knowing the information and collecting the information from an organization's perspective. Reflection, feedback, and feed forward is definitely those right time checkings wherein which it can happen across the employees to make sure that there is a constrained scope and level of learning engagement that happens on a timely basis across the organization. Yep. What are the key drivers considering from an organization's perspective, and how to drive it across the employees? So personalized learning paths can be as an aspire journey. So as a key account a junior manager, one can aspire themselves to be in the role of a key account manager or a sales manager. So these can be certainly as an aspire journeys where organizations can build the scope for the employees. Learning budgets are specific to an organization. Of course, having learning budgets into the scenario makes sure that the engagement towards the learning is very high. Mentorship programs are definitely for the employees to have those industry experts brought in from various fields, so that they have high engagement towards the learning scenarios. Of course, the recognition and rewards should be happening on the learning side of the engagement towards the employees. This actually helps them to regain the new skills and make sure that they are engaged on a timely basis within the organization's learning scope. So the key drivers for all the four mentioned can be simultaneously taken across having the unlimited learning ecosystem, as you rightly mentioned, on the skills mapping and the competence mapping in one of your inputs. Yep, having the thorough skills mapping and competence mapping will actually have the synergy towards the learning paths and the aspire journeys. Bite-sized learning and the learning snippets gives a high engagement interactivity, user-friendly interface. It can be as a workplace desktop, or else it can be as a mobile learning synergy that can be carried out across the employees. And to have the result and data oriented, uh, we can have the learning analytics engaged for an organization with the scope of having the digital learning element. Yep. Having said that, Smita, I also wanted to leverage on the technology for continuous learning. So, unlimited learning ecosystem is one such synergy that I have rightly mentioned. And with the components of AI and automation, now that is being in this scenario, we can also have the engagement across different verticals, such as the customer success, sales, wherein which an AI avatar engages with the learning interactivity and the learning scenarios. Mobile learning is a definite fetch now with mobile being handy. It becomes easily for employees to have the learning materials or the learning synergies carried out across their learning engagement. Digital identity is one such scenario wherein which an employee can actually have the access to a learning passport, which actually gives an overview about the learning in the about the learning history, customized custom design learning paths, and the customized learning journeys are specific for an organization to consider it as a mandatory or a compliance kind of training for the employees across the organization. Learning analytics is a must to know like where the engagement of an employee has been happening on the performance. So this actually gives the right scenario and the right engagement statistics. And virtual and augmented reality is definitely for the physically challenged, for them to have the right engagement. Of course, also with the organization's perspective, AR and VR technologies have been used for having the team building activities across the organization. So yes, Smita, with a quick overview about the ones which I've shared, I have a couple of questions to mention it. So I would like to know your insights on how best you leverage on the employee feedback that is currently happening in your organization. If you can share us your insights on that, that would be great.
See, I think feedback is received from in different forms. So feedback could be feedback that you receive at a learning journey process.
Yes.
So it could be informal or formal. So we have a lot of feedback that's received from an informal aspect as well, and in a formal way as well. So we have exit interviews that we have currently. We also do have feedback that we receive, let's say, at an onboarding stage. All of these are feedback that is very important, because ideally, the best way to kind of gauge the organization climate is definitely a pulse survey, where you just provide, you can ask anonymously the employees to get share their feedback, and and they're obviously honest, because they have no fear of anything. They don't have to be afraid. So if you are creating a culture of open feedback, people will be open to you and be transparent on. And it's also how you manage that feedback. Suppose you have an employee who writes into you on an aspect. Actually replying to them or talking to them about it is very important, because otherwise it looks like it doesn't matter what they have said. So even if they're wrong or right and so forth. So feedback on a generic level is important. And the only way that people would, an open culture of feedback is maintained, is when that feedback is managed well. And feedback should be managed well in such a way that it is for idea creation. So in case you have, a certain input that has come to you, for example, you realize that one of your sales staff who's going through a learning journey is really not getting the maximum from it, purely because they don't know what their learning journey is. When you hear a comment like that, what you do after that is important. What do you do after that? Do you go about on the drawing board and say, why did that happen? Or question everybody? Or you kind of say, what are the systems in place to kind of ensure that that feedback doesn't come back again? What are the processes you're going to change in order for that feedback not happen again? So as long as feedback is taken for idea creation, and we do that. It has happened in one particular case where something was highlighted, and the process is being evaluated at the moment as to how do we do it differently. So that's really when feedback becomes genuine, and a culture of open feedbacks take place.
Yep. Thank you, Smita. Thank you. I also have a query, Smita, considering the engagement that different industries or the organizations carry. So I want to understand your inputs on how best to streamline the engagement for store employees. And also, for an organization like yours, you have multiple brands. So is there any unified learning ecosystem that happens across different verticals in your organization, considering from the brand's perspective? So if you can highlight on this, it would be great.
Okay. For us, though we have diverse range of brands,
Yep.
all the brands for us typically are fashion brands. So
Yep.
there is a very clear-cut standard on what you want to achieve
Yep.
when it comes to the standards within the organization. So despite it being diverse, the main key elements are the same. Okay, when it comes to fashion retail brands, yes, how they operate are different. Each brand operates in a different way, and we understand that every brand has its own way of functioning and a different vision when it comes to how they function. However, on a common ground, we know in terms of service what they need to be providing. We know what let's say a sales assistant has to deliver versus a store manager. What are the skill set that they need? And how do we unify that journey is purely basically on discussions as to on a larger portfolio, which are the areas that we need to be focusing on. And then, so we're able to cater to that diverse range of brands. But then go deep dive when it comes to certain brands where they need more emphasis on certain aspects. So that is how we go about doing our L&D kind of plan or training plan to ensure that we cater to all. So we do a common strategy for the entire year, and then we break it down based on each of the brands that we operate in.
Okay, okay. I also want to reiterate your inputs on how do you strategize the initiatives across the store-based employees or the blue collar, because their contribution for an organization also plays a viable and a vital role. So I want to know your inputs on that aspect as well.
See, our frontline employees at the end of the day is our bread and butter. Okay, retail functions basically because of the team, because they are the bread and butter of the entire business. So any kind of, like I mentioned in the previous one, any kind of feedback that we get feedback through different process. During the onboarding process, we get feedback. During the learning journey, we get feedback. We get feedback when a team goes to visit the stores where they are doing their field visits. They do get inputs. So these are all taken into consideration when we are doing any kind of journey, be it a learning journey, be it a process, be it an audit procedure, be it an operational task. All of this is taken into consideration because these are the easier ways when it comes to your frontline workforce to ensure that you get inputs. Also, for example, you have today technology is advanced to a large extent that you definitely can get info from an ex-employee very easily in comparison to what what it was before. So everything could be let's say recorded or attained, whereas previously an employee didn't have a reach. There is no link between let's say an HR function or an L&D function. Today the reach is quite much higher, so they're able to reach out to all aspects. So definitely technology has played a huge part in how we ensure that our frontline workforce is giving their input. So definitely we do take inputs from them, and we work on these inputs because at the end of the day, that's how we make things better in the organization.
Yep. Thank you for elaborating on this point, Smita. As you rightly said, the frontline employees are definitely the bread and butter, and these inputs are completely viable in noticing their kind of factor for the continuous learning aspect as well. So, how to overcome the challenges in continuous learning? So, considering the time constraints, the challenge can be definitely met, as I have previously briefed on the bite-sized learning engagement with high learning interactivity across the employees. So if the challenge is more towards lacking of any motivation, we can link the learning to the career growth and career path for an employee, for his or her salience. Now, with the content or the kind of training or the kind of digital library which becomes overloaded, this can be completely curated with the AI kind of personalized path. So this can be for the role-based learning scenarios. Resistant to change, of course, uh, learning and change has to be constant. So probably considering from the organization's perspective, if they can add something as a concept called like learning activity of the day, learning theme of the month, or else like specific to a specific vertical within the organization, this will actually make it much more engaging. When an organization predominantly has limited sources, peer-to-peer learning engagement makes it highly interactive across the employees for continuous learning. Now with the open sources of libraries that are available and with the internet, this becomes a very seamless peer-to-peer continuous learning. So yeah. Having said that, Smita, I also have a quick question to ask you. Now, with the AI component that is being very jazzy across each and every industry, so it is a common synonym now. So, how would employees adopt to such technologies, Smita? If you can share your inputs on that, that would be very helpful.
So AI is something that is used very common nowadays. So whether it is artificial intelligence or, like somebody said to me, available intelligence, which we can choose which one it is. But really, adapting or adoption of AI depends on not just at an organization level, but at also an employee level. So it's, to a large extent, employees also have this kind of access. It's not only organizations that have access to AI-related, let's say, even learning, access to knowledge, so forth. So an employee can access this information. So if you were to look at how I think about it, it is not just the responsibility of an organization to kind of equip an employee with AI-related tools. It could be the employees also. It should be in their advantage to kind of invest in those tools. For example, today you have skill enhancement tools. AI technology and tools are available to acquire new skills, right? So you can learn data analysis, you can learn automation, or get customer insights. This could be at a corporate level, or it could be at an employee level. Both are there. But it's really, now maybe at an organization level, you may not have the ability to, or the company may not have the ability to kind of invest in such huge tools. Like the investment would be high. However, the employee has the ability to kind of go and probably upgrade himself, upskill himself when it comes to AI or data analysis and so forth. There's a lot of tools out there, but it's just finding the right one for you. Even efficiency and productivity. I mean, to a large extent, I mean, this is something that is a no-brainer. Freeing up employees to do more creative and strategic work. Today, AI enables you to do that, but it's really how you adapt it. How do you take it into your stride, and how do you make it useful to you? So it really makes a difference there. Decision support. So typically what we do nowadays is, not now, I mean, certain organizations pull out reports from the systems or the data that you have. But analysis can be something that is brought forward to you, or AI has the ability to give you these reports, and you just have to make informed decisions based on these reports. But you have to look at those reports. It is very nice to say that AI can give you those info and you can make analysis, but if you really don't do it, it's absolutely of no use, be it in HR, be it finance, marketing, any kind of industry. These are things that definitely are available tools. So ultimately, it is depending on the user and how the user wants to experience AI, and kind of leverage on AI. So today you have, for example, AI avatars, for example, for my learning journeys, you have AI avatars. You have the ability to embrace AI, not only for your own, not only for the organizational success, but also for your own individual career. So, it is something that that is there and needs to be kind of used in the right way as per what you require.
Thank you, Smita, for the brief overview on how AI is being integrated with the learning component and how the AI avatars have been coming into the scenario, and apart from the technology being used on how best to leverage it across the organizations and employees. So, apart from that, Smita, I would like to take it. We'd like to take it with the impact of continuous learnings. So, defining KPIs probably I feel is a must, because having clear metrics on the skills acquisition ratio and with the right kind of learning engagement in sync to the business objectives is must for any learning and development factor for an organization. Collecting and analyzing data, yep, deep dive within the learning analytics is must. It actually shows like where the employee is having an high engagement. So what kind of materials the employee is using, and what kind of high engagement is there on the performance and adaptation to the new skills, and gaining attraction within the workforce learning engagement scenarios for employees. Review and reiterate. Yes, there has to be a certain review on what kind of learning engagement has happened, and to see where the employee has been with the learning progress and everything. Communicate and announcing the results is must. It actually highlights the learning engagement for a specific employee. It also encourages the peers within the employee ecosystem to achieve on new skills and drive towards the organization objectives. Having said that, Smita, I have a curious query which I wanted to ask, and I wanted to know, like, since your I mean experiences towards the retail side of the industry. So, how the industry is evolving, and what kind of new skill sets and the competencies are essential for the employees who are within the scope of the retail industry space?
Retail as a landscape has definitely changed dramatically. Like we all know that in the recent years, especially since the outbreak of COVID-19. I mean, I think it's affected every single individual, not just on this call, but every single individual around the world. From making sure that, there were, we had to have lockdowns, and obviously people were not able to physically reach the stores. Now, we're not only talking about fashion retail, but we're talking about all retail stores. And getting customers back into to a brick and mortar kind of a setup. In some cases, people prefer to stay digital, right? And whereas some people prefer to go and have that, they wanted to have the look and the feel of the store. They preferred that versus the e-commerce platform or the digital platform. So today, drastically, it has changed. What was like typically, if you look at a sales assistant previously had to give you customer service, had to tell you about the product and so forth, and he had to be convince you, has to explain to you styles and so forth. Today, thanks to e-commerce, thanks to the technology itself, the customers are more well versed with the product. They know what they want. The product is at their hand. They know exactly the product that how it looks, what it would be like. They have more info about the product than even sometimes an employee.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, a sales assistant, what he needs to learn is different today. He
Yeah.
doesn't not only have to give customer service, he has to learn technology. He
Yeah.
has to be well versed with how do I check that? How do I check
Yeah.
if there is a size available? How do I check if it's available in another store versus this store?
Yeah.
Where can I, that kind of service has completely changed. So
Yeah.
in terms of even know-how, how the or competency level, when technology was not something that was important for a sales assistant, today it is important. So
Yeah.
things have drastically changed from what it was then. Now, for example, let's talk about e-commerce. Now, sales assistants today could be involved more in product fulfillment, to gathering data, even with omni-channel, clientele and social media interaction. Sometimes they could be involved in all of this because they understand, and that is totally different from what it was before. So
Yeah.
we are in a very changing world, and focus on the skill sets have definitely changed. So
Yeah.
understanding what is a seasonal buy versus what's happening, how is the marketing done, opportunities that they have. Even, for example, when they're growing up, or their career paths are different. Today, a store manager would have to understand analysis. He would have to be more in line with how do I use my employees effectively? How do I make sure they're productive? These kind of aspects were never thought of previously, or they were there but didn't have the tools, for example, to do those things.
Yeah.
So definitely upskilling is an area that is important, and the focus is different today versus what it was before. So retail has definitely changed. And having said that, there's a lot more for in terms of growth and know-how, what a retail employee needs to know versus what it was before. So I hope I answered your question, and it's quite clear.
Thank you, Smita. Yes, I see that the beautiful virus game has completely evolved and transformed the businesses, not only across the retail, but across different industries. Having said, I mean, like, thank you for your answer. And yes, you have answered my question. Yep, I have covered almost every aspect of continuous learning, and I would like to know, like, the understanding of the individuals who have attended this webinar. So Zoe, if you can take on the Q&A session, that would be great. Thank you.
Of course. Hi, everyone. It's Mitan Harris. Thank you so much for delivering such an engaging presentation. So I'm going to go ahead with the question. So first one, how to effectively know and update the employees of ever-changing system and functionalities? That's the first question.
Can you repeat that?
Yes, sorry. How to effectively know and update the employees of ever-changing system functionalities?
For me, it is understanding the business. Okay, you will only know different functions have different, like, obviously for each function things are changing constantly. Let's say for finance is changing, for marketing is changing, and similarly for every single function in an organization will change. But that change can be only done, like, from an HR perspective. There are some things, for example, that you can sit down and have conversations with, let's say, the business head, to say, okay, how has your business changed, and what are the skill set that you need differently from what you have currently? What are the areas that you need training on, or can we build it in-house? Because you might have an expert who's in-house. At times, somebody's very good at Excel, but they don't have the time. But you need to kind of build that. So you need to see, how can I use this resource to kind of upskill somebody else who's not upskilled? And similarly, understand from each of the business unit heads as to what are things that have changed. Because an HR person cannot really at one go engage and understand what's happening in marketing or what's happening in finance and so forth. It's only through conversations with the business heads and also to understand from different, probably networks to understand where do we change and how do things change. That's one of the areas that I would say. So it's conversations, and then building on what do you do next. So I'm not sure if I answered that question, but
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead with the next one. So, given the dynamic nature of business needs, how can we ensure that our skill metrics remains balanced between functional and behavior skills? And is it regularly updated to meet these evolving requirements?
Okay, so when it comes to behavioral, the skills matrix, definitely you have to have an element of behavior as well as the skills itself. It cannot be one over another. And that's why I choose to call it, or my team choose to call it a competency matrix, a skill matrix versus a competency matrix. Because it's not only the behavioral aspect that we are looking at. We want to engage and ensure that the skills aspect is also considered. Now, how often should it be done? I think it is something that should be looked at probably every year. It's not only an exercise to be done by the HR or the L&D team. It is an exercise that has to be done with the functional head. It cannot be ever any kind of learning journeys, even when you create, or a journey that you create from a skill matrix, cannot be independent of the stakeholders. So the stakeholders have to be completely aligned to that. So you can't create, like HR can't sit and say, okay, this is your skill matrix and this is your behavioral matrix for this position. No, it doesn't work like that. It has to be in alignment with the business heads in order for it to work. If it is aligned, it will work. And there is a higher possibility. It does take time, but it will work.
Great, thank you. And as we are talking about skill metrics, how can we ensure that the learning paths are aligned with the skills matrix? And which one should we target first, the skill matrix or the learning path?
Okay, so for us, when we made the skill matrix, first is building the skill matrix by default, right? When you build the skill matrix, you will know, okay, so the skill matrix takes some time. Once you've created that skill matrix, at some stage, you will start evaluating your public or your larger audience, right? Your employees. And then you will realize there is a gap between X and Y in these areas. So you will start working and this gap can be identified in their performance appraisals. So that's the only place where you'll find it, that there is a gap between what is required of them to do versus what they're doing. And what are the areas they need, for example, let's say it's communication, a simple example, but it could be communication writing, right? So it could be for an employee that you have this particular issue, and then you collate all that info, and then you create a learning path. Ideally, the learning path should be for an individual, okay? But if you have the scope and you have the ability to build that, and that is possible when you have AI tools. If you don't have AI tools, building individual learning paths becomes very difficult. So you got to build either learning paths that are to a position, or if it is, for example, if you have those AI tools available, then you can create individual learning path that you assign to that individual. So this is what I would say.
Okay, thank you so much, Smita. And the last question, do you have any tips for incorporating gamification into online training programs?
See, definitely there are tools. I haven't worked with one, okay, but I definitely have seen tools that work, right? I'm not sure if Harish wants to answer this question, but I definitely have seen tools that do work with gamification. And gamification is something that is quite, with the younger generation, with the younger workforce, it does work because it's easy to understand. People don't like to sit for a half-an-hour session, forget a 4-hour session. They don't want to sit because they want to understand a concept at their space, at their own time. And gamification definitely helps. I have seen products that do it. You can build your own products as well with gamification, but there are products that use gamification in terms of kind of getting knowledge or transferring knowledge. So gamification is one of those good tools to have. So yeah.
To continue what Smita said, like gamification definitely has that upper advantage to have a very high engaging learning scenario. So, I mean, like within a vertical of an organization, we can have the leadership board. We can see who is the champion, what kind of learning engagement has happened. So, definitely the gamification tool adapts to higher learning engagement, and it actually creates a scenario to know like what kind of learning interactivity has happened, and to relate to the learning champion with specific verticals of the organization. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, the last one. They're asking about a common learning strategy.
Having a common learning strategy is possible, is something that is good to have. However, in today's age and time, yes, you can have a common learning strategy for the entire organization, right? But if you want more efficient, let's say, departments or functions, you would have to have individual learning paths, because every business cannot work on a common learning strategy. Because yes, it's good to have, and that's the way when you don't have as much technology. But if you want to you be more efficient, definitely learning has to be individual, not common.
And that's about it. Thank you very much, Smita and Harris, for answering the questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Smita, for having an engaging session, and I thank everyone who has attended this webinar. Hope it was much more on a very learning, engaging scenario. Thank you for raising the right kind of queries, and hope we have answered to your questions. And yep, we thank you all for attending this webinar. Thank you.
Sorry, guys. A last question to answer. It just popped up.
Okay.
For a company who uses LMS, like for example, My Learning Hub and LMS where you can enroll courses, is it a good idea to incorporate number of courses enrolled to performance appraisals? What are the disadvantages of doing so?
So My Learning Hub is an LMS system. So it is a digital learning platform which is focused just on the learning management kind of simulation for an organization. Now, when I infer the question rightly, probably it is coming either from an L&D team who wants to incorporate content and the learning synergies to drive with the right kind of analytics. So content is complemented with any kind of digital intelligent or digital learning platform. So content does not come as a separate SCORM file. So if the content needs to be curated, yes, definitely it comes as a SCORM package. But then content complements with the platform and with the kind of learning analytics to have that high engaging scenario. Yep.
I think the question was stemming from the fact that is it required to ensure that somebody does these learning in order to, as part of their performance, right? Is that the question, from what I understand? So I think there's a certain number of trainings that needs to be as part of the performance, because at the end of the day, there is no incentive for an employee sometimes to just do those trainings. Okay. some basic trainings have to be kind of by default be part of the performance appraisal. So they have to be given as they have to do those trainings prior to making it as part of their performance appraisal. They should have completed those trainings, because there is no, I mean, generally as an employee, you tend to do your generic work and you tend to ignore these things, but these are important. So for me, I think having a certain number of L&D initiatives or L&D trainings as mandatory is important. It doesn't have to be a whole set of trainings, but it has to be few of them. So yes.
And now we can finish. Thank you so much for both of you guys.
Thank you, ODILO. Thank you, Leena and Harish. And thank you to everyone who's patiently been listening. Do appreciate your time, and have a good day. Take care.